Hi, and welcome to another sample scene analysis for our film unit. This one, I'm hoping you'll find familiar. I hope you're a fan of Shrek and the hero's journey. Now, I have to warn you though, once you learn about the hero's journey, hopefully you've taken a look at that information first, you might find that some films are uh, I don't want to say wrecked for you, but but maybe it's going to be eye-opening. You're going to start to see different types of films pop up all over the place, and the hero's journey is one of them that is a favorite of everyone. We all like to see the hero, and you'll start to see this pattern popping up in lots of different movies, not just Disney movies, not just Pixar movies. But all kinds of films such as adventure films, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future. Those are all following the hero's journey. Now, some films take it a little bit in a different direction where they kind of use satire or they poke fun at the traditional hero's journey a little bit, but you'll see that they still have the same components. Now, if I were to use Shrek for my film analysis, I would again choose 2 to 3 specific scenes that really stand out to me that illustrate not only the message, but also the hero's journey. So when I say message and genre, such as hero's journey, um, I'm talking about incorporating the type of film that it is into my analysis. So for example, if you wanted to look at adventure films or gangster films, you're still going to look at that message. Maybe gangster films, you look at the message of family and how family always does what it needs to protect the family. Then you would go back and take a look at those scenes that not only illustrate family and the theme of that, but also how it fits into the gangster film. So we're going to do something similar with Shrek and the hero's journey. And this is another example of how to analyze film. So I chose, again, the opening scene from Shrek. I would also choose kind of a mid scene and then probably an ending scene to illustrate that journey and the particular theme or message. So hopefully you're familiar with Shrek and I'm not wrecking anything for you as far as spoiler alerts, but this is from the original Shrek. And the opening scene is important because it shows the ordinary world, right? So our hero's journey begins with an ordinary person. And then they get thrown into that call to action. So the opening scene shows that the normal everyday life, it sets the scene, and I would want to talk about that. But I also want to talk about the message. So in the opening scene, the message that you might be focusing on with the entire film might be ordinary is extraordinary. So an ordinary person can become an extraordinary person by highlighting his or her attributes, right? So, or, if you want to go cliche, beauty, you could go with something like beauty is only skin deep, or it counts what's on the inside, not what's on the outside. And it's like an onion, right? You peel back the layers. So all of those things could be considered a message, and it just depends on how you are looking at it. So let's take a look at the opening scene real quick. You're going to see that he pokes fun of fairy tales a little bit, but again, that's part of the hero's journey. The traditional fairy tale, we see a lot of hero's journeys being portrayed. So we have this opening scene, and even animated films have cinematography with them and cinematic elements too. So we have this voiceover with Shrek reading this traditional book, which brings everyone back into not only times of younger years, but also the hero's journey. But then Shrek does something a little bit different with it. He portrays his disbelief for it. So you could talk about the comedic elements of this that help to portray our hero, who is not such a traditional hero as we would expect. You could also talk about the ordinary life that he lives. You know, we see him in the outhouse, right? If you fast forward a little bit, we see he's, you know, doing things like showering in his slime bath. Um, you know, he's happy with himself. It's an ordinary life. He doesn't see anything wrong. Um, he's happy with who he is, but there's also an inner struggle too. There's some conflict. So we see him doing ordinary things, but we also see him running against conflict, right? Well, with the idea that he's an ogre and people are afraid of him. So we've got this external conflict. Which leads him to have a little bit of internal conflict. You know, he was happy, and then he starts to question himself a little bit. As the scene goes on, we see, you know, people messing with him. Ultimately, you know, he wins out, right? But he's still questioning how people look at him, what they think of him, and where he ultimately fits into everything. So this opening scene shows that he has this ordinary life, but we start to see some conflicts too. So we want to talk about this opening scene a little bit as far as the hero's journey, but also that theme of maybe not judging people. The idea that we judge people for external things versus internal things. So as the scene plays out, he sees this reward for fairy tale creatures, right? So he's thinking about it, and this is the beginning of that call to action. We get this foreshadowing of that call to action. Now, we could look at the next scene where he actually sees all these fairy tale characters coming onto his land. And we could say, you know, that's the call to action in our hero's journey. And it also makes him think a little bit about how he judges himself and other people judge him because they say he shouldn't be the hero. So in the next clip, I'll show you another scene where we get introduced to not only the theme again, maybe not judging people, but also we get into another element of the hero's journey. So I'll see you then.